In today's episode, we're talking about a recent film adaptation of one of Stephen King's short stories, The Boogeyman. Of course, before we begin, I have to do a brief synopsis of the movie. So basically, Sadie and her younger sister, Sawyer, are reeling from the recent death of their mother. They're not getting much support from their father, a therapist dealing with his own pain. When a desperate patient unexpectedly shows up at their house seeking help, he leaves behind a terrifying supernatural entity that preys on families and feeds on the suffering of its victims. Okay, and of course, we've got another round of trivia, creeping it real. I've been enjoying the trivia recently, so
yeah, man.
We're just rocking with it. I only have 3 questions this time around. Are you ready?
Yeah, ready.
Question number 1, true or false? This movie was not originally set to be released in theaters.
I'm gonna say false.
No, it's true.
For real? They were gonna release it? They were gonna do like a Netflix something?
So it was meant to be released straight to Hulu, but the strong reception from test screenings proved to the studio basically that it can be a theatrical release, so they ended up doing that. An important symbolic animal in the King universe is featured in this movie. What animal is it, and where was it featured?
Was it a dog?
No. That's a good guess, though.
Cat?
No. It's gonna be kind of hard because you haven't read much King novels.
Frog?
Close, you're close. I'll give you one more. One more try.
Lizard?
No.
Spider?
No.
Shit.
Okay, I'll just tell you. It is a turtle, which is apparently a big thing. I feel like
oh yeah.
There are turtles in so many of his novels, if not all.
Yeah, that would be like my last guess. I remember other shows that we watched, like Castle Rock or something. There was like a turtle.
Yeah. So it's a big thing. Apparently, a lot of King fans know that a turtle shows up so often in his novels, if not all of them, and it was featured in a painting in the family house.
Wow, they did it subtle.
You gotta throw in all those references. He's got a ton of them. Okay, and then the last question is true or false? The short story by King was originally featured in a short story collection, all by Stephen King.
True.
This one is false. So this was actually featured in a March 1973 issue of the Cavalier magazine. Do you remember short stories in magazines?
Yeah, 1973. This shit is that old?
1973. Wow. I feel like he had a huge string of short stories come out in magazines and stuff like that, and then, it started to evolve into novels, but, do you remember when there were short stories in magazines?
Yeah, people would, write stories and, send them in.
Do you remember magazines?
Yeah.
What a time. What a time to be alive.
But that's really cool, to just write up a story and just have it in a magazine, and then later on you get famous, and then somebody digs it up.
Right? And then it was later added to a collection of his short stories, so that's pretty cool. I remember when I was younger, that was my dream, was to get a short story into a magazine. But now that's probably not relevant. Box
office, 82.3 million. Wow.
That's actually a lot. Yeah, I would consider that a success. So we're jumping back to the first question where we were talking about its theatrical release because the test screenings did so well, and it looks like it did well at the box office too. So I'm actually kind of surprised. But in the same realm, not really, because Sophie Thatcher is the main character here. So I'm sure a lot of people recognize her as well.
Yeah, and they said the movie looks like a $10 to $15 million movie to make, but it cost $35 million.
What?
Because of inflation, I guess.
No way.
And then
it really looked like a low budget movie.
Yeah. And then it made $82.5 million. So they did good.
Well, it didn't look like a low budget movie. It just looked like not a super high end movie, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I'm glad it was well received. It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Okay, so why did we pick this piece of content? I think we have been fans of Stephen King. Not necessarily his novels. We would love to dive into his novels more often, and maybe we'll do this for the podcast as well. But we're more so fans of the adaptations, the visual adaptations, the movies, the shows, and things like that. So we're just generally a fan of King on that level, and we'd like to go deeper. So whenever an adaptation comes out, we just know that we're going to check it out. Also, hearing Stephen King, hearing that name, you're going to want to check it out, right?
Yeah.
You just know that he's gonna crush it.
Yeah, and then it's his horror is really good when he was drunk.
Yeah.
So this was I expected all this to be his old stuff. So it was going to be good.
I feel like his older stuff just gets weirder and weirder in the best way.
Yeah, like where did he come up with the shit?
And sometimes it's super simple. Like, this is a short story, so I'm sure the story itself, we can probably read it and it'll be kind of simple in a sense, but also not. Like, it's so good.
Yeah.
Also, we are fans of Sophie Thatcher because we recognize her from Yellow Jackets. So that was another appeal. We know that she's a great actress. It was going to be well done no matter what, I feel.
Yep.
Why did we like this movie? And just to, like, set things clear, we did like this movie, right?
Yeah, we did like it.
Yeah. I think something that I really loved about The Boogeyman was that, and you kind of get the vibe from the name of the movie, right? It had a lot of classic horror tropes. It followed a format that is just very familiar. We talked about this with the Saw episode, but it followed a format that's familiar to horror fans. It's something that is almost comforting. I know comforting is a weird word to use when we're talking about horror, but it's familiar. You kind of know what to expect because you know the formula of how horror works, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and then it's like, I mean, the story was kind of stereotypical.
Yeah.
But this time they showed you more like how the father and the daughter like reacted
Yeah.
to the mom. Yeah, so I think that was kind of like new. You don't really see that in movies.
You mean like the trauma that they were kind of dealing and coping with?
Yeah, and how the father was staying away from her.
Yeah, I kind of like that too. I like that they showed a little bit more of the vulnerability of the father. Because, like, in a lot of movies that are structured in this way in the past, the father is just kind of cagey and you'll never see that perspective. It just looks like a grouchy man most of the time.
Yeah, but he was actually, in this one, he's emotional with her and talking to her.
You can see that he's really struggling, which I like. I just felt like I was watching something from the early 2000s, but also in a good way because the budget was more, so you could just see that it was done pretty well. I like the house. The house was huge. It was vast. It looked very intricate. I kind of wanted to be in that house.
And then the painting.
Yeah.
The painting room was cool.
Yeah.
And then the way that she interacted with her friends.
Yeah.
Like, her friend is on her side, but then she's, like, trying to be popular.
Totally,
Like,
yeah.
they didn't really, like make it too deep into that. I guess they tried to be different from, like, to make it more like a unique story in the 2020s instead of making it back, like, 1990.
Yeah.
You could see that they, like, all right, let's not do that because it's been done too much.
That's true. And another, like, you bring up a good point because teenagers in the 90s were a lot more not open about their feelings and emotions and just, like, societal norms as they are now. And it's really apparent here, or am I using the right word? It's really obvious here that kids are much more aware. They know what's going on. They're more in tune with just emotions. People are just much more woke. And I don't mean that in an offensive way. I mean that, like, in a good way, in a progressive way.
Yeah.
Another thing I liked about this movie is that it was just, like, spooky, good fun. Like, it was scary. It wasn't, like, super scary, but it was spooky. And there were some really good jump scares.
Yeah, like when she went to the closet, that shit was...
Yeah.
I didn't expect that shit to happen. And then they locked her in like dicks.
Yeah. Everything was just high energy at that point. I think that was probably one of the more scarier parts of the movie. But the horror is amped up. Even though it follows, like, a familiar structure that's kind of dated, the horror was there for sure.
Yeah. Did you like how the monster looked? Was it different, or you were just like,
I don't know. I'm always disappointed when it comes to the monster. I prefer to not see the monster and just be scared of the kind of, like, lingering in the shadows part more than actually seeing the monster.
Yeah. It was... I mean, it looked like... You would expect it to look like that. Like, long arms and, like, walking around like an insect. Kind of shit, yeah.
I feel like it's probably accurate to the story because Stephen King likes to do that kind of.
Yeah, I remember it was 1973, so he probably came up with this shit first, and then people started...
Oh, you mean like...
The idea of how it looked, and then people made their monsters afterwards.
Yeah.
So he must have been the creator, you don't know.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, a lot of people take the inspiration from his kinds of monsters. That totally makes sense. It wasn't really the part that I remember the most. The scary parts that I remember the most are when... Like, the anticipation, the leading up stuff.
And when it jumps out.
And when, like, the main characters are kind of stuck in a situation. trapped almost.
It wasn't like a monster that you'll remember. It's like whatever. It's like one of these big monster shits that just jump out.
Yeah.
I think they were like using fire or something, and they were shooting at it, and the shit wouldn't die. So I'm like, what? How do you stop this shit? But anyways, we'll go to
Did we figure out a solution? I can't remember what the solution was by the end of it. How did they get rid of him? Or did they not?
I don't know if it's like a disease and you have to like pass it on to the next person or some shit like that.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
so
what it was. Because it was kind of feeding off of other people's trauma.
Yeah.
And that's why it stuck onto this family. Yes, you're right.
It was a wife and husband, right? And the husband came and he passed it on? And then the husband killed himself?
Yes.
So it was just living with them. Like, that was the weird part.
I think there was a bit of an explanation with the wife of the original family that passed it on to the main characters, where she was saying, like, there's so many versions of it, or so many iterations of it, kind of all coexisting at the same time. So while they're passing this one along one another, there's other versions passing along to other families, too.
Yeah.
Almost like a disease.
Yeah, and then it was like, it was here in her place, and then it took a walk and went over to
yeah,
to
I think
her
that's
other house.
I think that's how they were trying to explain it. This is not the one singular family dealing with trauma. It's happening all over the place, and variations of this monster is all over the place, which we can kind of look at in a symbolic way if you think about it. But yeah, it was kind of a weird explanation, and we can kind of segue perfectly into our dislikes because, first of all, let's go back to the...
Hold on. I like that ball that she had. The glowing ball that her sister had.
Yeah. What?
I want to get that glowing ball.
That is so random. We're talking about...
Like, you know how they put, like, objects in... They put objects in movies?
Yeah.
And that is the fucking object. That is the object.
You mean, like, a product placement?
No, not a product placement. Like, you know when they put, like, there's every horror movie, there's, like, something that's fucking weird and cool and you want it.
Like a product placement.
Like, let me see, like, in it... Let me see. Maybe the projector was cool. Like, there's one object that's really cool. Like,
yeah.
remember they were playing the arcade games too? So that, like, stuck to me.
Oh my god.
So it's like...
This
ball.
So
when I saw this ball, I was looking that shit up on Amazon. I was
First
like,
of all, let's give the audience context. Ian is talking about a ball of light, like just a tech product, in one of the kids' rooms. That's all he's talking about right now.
Yeah, but it was, like, such a bright ball, and then it was, like... I'm sure that shit changes different colors. And then she was rolling it. Like, that's a prop. And then she was rolling it. And then it was moving around by itself because the boogeyman was moving it. But it's like, you expect that light to save you. And that shit is just rolling around like fuck.
Yeah, you're right. It was smart. It was a smart use of a product in a movie because you needed the light. So yeah, you're right.
I want that ball. I'll put it on my wish list.
Clearly, we are entertained and amazed by such little things. Us millennials just, experiencing magazines and all. But anyway, back to the dislikes. You mentioned briefly about things not being really, like, stand out or special about this movie, and I think that's one of my dislikes. There's nothing particularly special about it. I know I also mentioned in the likes that I like the classic format, but we can take the classic format and switch it up or add something unique to it and make it super brand new. And I don't think I get that in this movie.
Yeah, like maybe if they made it, like, gory. Something weird and, like, really super unique. But it wasn't like that. It was just like, this thing is scary and it's coming after you. Yeah.
Maybe it would be, like, something unexpected almost. Like, the classic format goes one step after the other, and then something is just so out of place that it shocks you. That would be kind of cool to see. Or maybe just, I don't know, just a little bit more of a newness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was just like, it wasn't like it was bland, but it was like, it kind of was, but it was like, this is the main character, this is the horror, this is why she has the horror, like, you know what I mean? It was like, yeah. It was like written down in steps. It wasn't like, oh shit, let's go here, something crazy is gonna happen.
It's like you can watch that movie and as a horror lover, exactly what's gonna happen step by step as it progresses. And that also segues into another dislike of mine, because as it was progressing and I knew what was going on, I was waiting for, like, the montage moment where you figure things out and the solution starts to formulate. And in the solution, was the wife of the original family just lurking around in her house with no lights on for how many years? How long have those children been dead?
She has no idea what to do.
What was she doing in there? Why did nobody know anything about her?
She did know what to do, but then her shit didn't even work. So it's like...
But, like, what was she doing in the house in the dark all the time? Was she leaving? Was she getting groceries? Like, what was going on?
Yeah, remember she said how it lives in the dark, so she has to keep lighting candles. So I'm just like, okay, why'd you just turn the lights on? Or buy some high beam light?
Practically, it was weird. It was like you walked into an abandoned house and this woman was just living there the entire time.
With candles.
And was figuring out the solution to this movie the entire time. Like, what?
Yeah, also it had like that stereotypical shit where the parents never believe you that there's a monster. The dad didn't believe you, like, yeah, we know.
Yeah. And then also, if the wife of the original family who was, like, cursed or whatever, or that had this monster following them, if the wife was there, and the husband was also there, because the husband went to the therapist, like, why did he kill himself then? Like, were they not communicating?
Did he get the therapy out by telling him how...
Were they not on the same page? She's over here trying to figure out a solution while he's over here trying to pass it on to someone else. Were they on the same page? Were they kind of creeping in the corner of their house the entire time? It just didn't make sense, and it was weird.
I guess that's how he was trying to get away with it. Trying to get away from it. He was like, here, you take it, and then let me see if I can get back with my wife.
Not even! He killed himself!
And then he goes kill himself.
So he was just planning on... Well, he definitely planned on passing it on to one person and then ditching his wife, leaving her to just kind of deal with it. What a horrible dude, actually.
Yeah.
What?
That shit didn't work out. Like, that shit didn't work out good with the story.
Yeah, it kind of didn't make sense. It definitely felt like a quick wrap-up answer to the end of the movie because they needed to wrap it up, and it just didn't actually make sense. But that's also kind of reminiscent of crappy old movies. Did
you really care, like, how she was, like, grieving for her mom, or you're just like...
No, I cared about the base story. I did. It's just... And Sophie Thatcher, she's a great actress. So and also the father was a great... There are great actors in this movie, and so, like, the performance is done well. It's just the formula of the story. Perhaps it's the script. It's just kind of superficial in a sense, and so you can only go so far with that.
Yeah, because you've seen it happen many times. It didn't break the mold.
Yeah,
but it's a good story to, like, to have a memory of, like, an old school horror movie.
Yeah, it's kind of... This is such a weird word to say, but it's kind of cozy. Is that
cozy horror?
You know what I mean? It's like a comforting kind of read. Like, you know when people are reading books, they go for something like light thrillers. And you just know that you're going to read something familiar, but it's still a thriller. It's kind of like that. Because I could watch that and be like, oh yeah, you know, I'll just watch that over dinner. It's a chill movie. As opposed to something like Talk to Me. Talk to Me is not a light watch. You know?
But what, did anybody die in this movie? Besides her mom?
Yes.
And the lady died, right? The wife? You know what I mean? Like, important characters that you give a shit about.
Oh, you mean as it progressed? No, it was mostly just, like, scares.
It wasn't even... Like, you know, you expect, like, the movie... Everybody expected in the movie that somebody's gonna die, like one of the main characters, but none of the main characters died.
I mean, they definitely got in like tricky situations, so it was like close to it, but it wasn't that intense.
So it was kind of lame-ish.
I mean,
I would still recommend the movie though.
Like we said, I personally wouldn't say it's completely lame. It's nothing stand out, but it's a cozy horror. I'm gonna say cozy horror. I'm just gonna go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you agree?
Comfortably under a blanket horror.
Get your hot cocoa and watch a little Stephen King horror movie. That's all that we have for this week's episode. The question that I have for the audience is kind of a classic question. Are you a Stephen King fan? And what's your favorite Stephen King screen adaptation? Rapid fire. What is your favorite? I'll say mine. It's Castle Rock. It. Which one?
The new one.
Yeah. The chapter 1 or the chapter 2?
Chapter 1.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
That shit made me shit myself.
They had some good jump scares in that one. Yeah. Well, you let us know in the discussion post that we post on Instagram. Don't forget to check that after you listen or watch this episode. We always put a question in that discussion post and we share some like behind the scenes and stuff about whatever piece of media that we're talking about. But thank you so much for listening this week. If you liked today's episode and you want to hear more from us, do us a favor, share this podcast with a friend or a family member, a fellow horror lover. That just helps get the word out about us, and then we can continue doing the show. And tune in next Wednesday, because we're talking about a demo of a video game. That's right, just a demo that is deemed one of the best horror video games ever, spawning dozens, if not more, games to follow its exact format, PT. But for now,
we'll see you in the kitchen with a knife.